Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Zhang Wei, Deputy Secretary General of CCG, Center for China and Globalization. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 17th CCG VIP Luncheon. It will focus on global development, cooperation, and the role of China. Thank you for taking time to join us today. First of all, let's welcome Director of Media and Public Relations of CCG, Ms. Luo Yan, to introduce our distinguished guest.
Good afternoon. I would like to extend a special welcome to our esteemed guest. We are privileged to have diplomatic representatives from 19 countries, including 8 ambassadors, with us today. We have invited His Excellency Hallam Henry, Ambassador of Barbados, His Excellency Kenji Kanasuki, Ambassador of Japan, His Excellency Kalis Ihenboms, Ambassadors of Latvia, His Excellency Roel Rayland, Ambassadors of Luxembourg, His Excellency Andrew Happes, Ambassadors of Netherlands, His Excellency Jürgen Berg, Ambassador of Switzerland, His Excellency Selçuk Yunar, Ambassador of Turkey, His Excellency Hossein Alamadi, Ambassador of United Arab Emirates, and Stephen Graham, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Germany, Nanette van der Diele, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Kenya, Abhishek Shuka, Deputy Chief of Mission, Embassy of India. In addition, diplomatic representatives from the Embassy of Croatia, Embassy of Egypt, Embassy of Estonia, EU delegation, Embassy of Indonesia, Embassy of Kazakhstan, Embassy of Namibia, Embassy of Switzerland, and Embassy of United Kingdom are also participating in our event. We also honor to welcome the representative from the Asia Development Bank, IMF, UNDP, UNFPA. Moreover, we are privileged to be joined a distinguished panel of experts, including Gao Jian, Han Bing, Hou Mengxin, Luo Yihan, Jing Xu, the President of the China International Trade Association, Andrew Radulescu, Tian Deyou, and Xu Sitao. Furthermore, today's luncheon featured participants from the leading companies including Shenzhen Cross-Border E-Commerce Association, Pucheng Future Beijing Technology Company Limited, Shenzhen Qianhai Huangpu Fund Company Limited, and China Environmental Protection Federation. Last but not least, the presence of media representatives from outlets including CGTN, China.org.cn, China Daily, Tokyo Broadcasting System, TBS, iPhone.com, and Nikkei Incorporated. We ensure broad coverage and dissemination of today's important discussion. Thank you all once again for your support and engagement. We're looking forward to fruitful and inspiration lunch. Now let's begin with the opening remarks of Henry Huiyao Wang, the founder and president of the Center for China and Globalization, the former counselor at China State Council. Please.
Thank you, Luo Yan. So it's really a great honor to welcome all you again to the 17th CCG VIP Luncheon that CCG has been conducted since last year. And so again, this has really become a well-established platform. So we have so many friends, ambassadors, and I also have a deputy head of Indonesia was here, and we have all the good friends, and also I had quite a few. My former MOFCON colleague joined us also in this room, and also many companies and media friends, and so many international organizations. You know, you have IMF, you have ADB, you have all those great economists around table here as well. So what I actually wants to share a bit about this, tell a bit about this subject today is that we're going to talk about global development cooperation and the role of China, because recently, of course, China had quite a few summit like SCO, and BRICS summit with Brazil, and of course, and then we are now getting into the full season of autumn now. Gets very busy, and we have to find out how is the economy going, development going, and more importantly is the 15th 5 years plan is coming. And also we are also having October the China Central Economic, but no, I think the fourth plenum of 20th Party Congress, which is going to set the tune for 15th 5 years plan. So we're at this juncture. That's why I would like to talk about economy, talk about development, that we have really invited three very distinguished guests to talk about. But to start, like maybe I can warm up, and because we have heard a lot of people say, China's economy is flat, real estate bubble is burst, and so how is China doing? And so here we hope to give some different perspective. Basically, that in recent years we see that the world has entered a period of course, tremendous changes, transformation. The global economy has slowed down, and while protectionism is on the rise. So global value chain and industrial structures are being reshaped, and digital technology and AI are advancing at the unprecedented stage. So CCG also just concluded a very big conference at the CIFIS on Friday, and we have put that on the video as well. And also we'll put this Ambassador Roundtable luncheon on the video as well. So we can see the challenges. At the same time, the wealth gap between the nations are widening, and global fragmentation is also deepening. And populist sentiment have surged. We see unrest in many countries happening now. So trust deficit has grown as well. And international power dynamic are undergoing profound restructuring as we can see. So global challenges from climate change to public health crisis are intensifying, yet global governance lags behind global practice. So the international economy and how that related with Chinese economy also is the issue of the today. So I'd like to maybe just briefly, China development, I think that rising through transformation is still developing. For the past decade, just last 10 years, China has undergone an extraordinary transformation. For example, it has lifted 100 million just for the last 10 years, people out of extreme poverty. And of course, we have now building the foundation for a sustainable, innovative, driven growth, so-called new productive forces. But then, that's really shows how China now shifted from a manufacturing factory of the world to a more innovative center. There's actually, I identified three areas of that really strong China can collaborate closely with world. The first one is that China has built a world-class infrastructure backbone to support not only just China, but also Asia and also for the world at large. For example, China's development rests on a vast of integrated physical and digital infrastructure network, thanks to the globalization. For example, on the transportation, China has 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail, more than the rest of the world combined. So that's really very impressive. And they have 177,000 kilometers of expressways, and ranked first also globally. And then the world, China probably has the largest civil aviation network, with Guangzhou, Beiyang, and Shanghai Pudong among the business airports in China and globally. And 7 of the top 10 containers ports are in China, with Shanghai being the largest one in the world, probably. And digital infrastructure, China has over 4.5 million 5G base stations, about 60% of the global total. And China has over 1 billion 5G users. So that means if they're going to do all this automation, AI, and computing, the speed is transformation and connecting is quite good. And also the Eastern Data Western Computing Project with 8 national computing hubs and 10 major data center clusters. And of course, China is going to do all those, this transportation communication very strong. And on the energy infrastructure, the world's largest ultra high voltage power grid is in China, enable non-distant clean energy transformation. The world's largest renewable energy capacity by 2024, 436 gigawatt hydropower, 521 gigawatt of wind power, and then 887 gigawatt solar power. So that's adding all those renewable energy. So 60% of China's energy is 50 to 60% is renewable, and over 16 million electric cars charging stations or piles posted. So it's become the largest EV charging networks in China. Of course, China is also going to build another 5 Three Gorges dams. So you can see that the energy transformation is enormous. The second part is an innovation of talent powerhouse that China is going to push up. China is no longer probably just a world factory, but it also become a global innovation engine. China produced 73% of the world high-level scientific papers, ranking first globally in publication and citations. China has over 7 million full-time R&D personnel, the most in the world, and over 30 million university graduates every year. So since the reform opening up, more than 10 million Chinese, and including Hong Kong, Macau, have studied overseas, and over 80% of return. So that actually driving up China's gain and also bring circulation with the world. And of course, China is ranked first globally in patent applications. So all these new patents largely now coming out of China. For example, in the EV car, China has the majority of the new latest advanced patents. But also China is also advancing in AI, quantum information, clean energy, and biomedicine. And finally, from the we can see the world is transforming from the traditional power to green energy. So a new industrial era is emerging, basically. So history shows that how technology revolution reshaped global power, and in terms of development. And in the 19th century, we see Britain rose through the steam engine, textile, and railways. And in the 20th century, the United States led through electrification, semiconductors, and internet, digital. Now in the 21st century, the world entered a new era defined by green transition. So I would say that is a green globalization is really happening now. So in this new industrial revolution, China is emerging as one of the leading force in the global green transition. So China's green rise, actually, just to finish this, China possesses the most complete industrial chain and largest market scale of the world. It already leads globally in solar panels, wind power, electric vehicles, energy storage, and grid transformation technology. And so in 2024, China's power generation exceeding 10 trillion kilowatt hours and about 1/3 of global total. So China's consumption of the power is 2.5 times of US and 3 times of Europe. So the world actually top 4 wind turbine manufacturers are now all Chinese in China. So during the 14th five-year plan, the share of renewable China's power capacity rose from 40% to nearly 60% in the last 5 years, with an annual addition of the world of the wind and the solar capacity soaring past 100, 200, and even 300 gigawatts. So you can see this past space. So basically what I'm saying is that, we're still quite cautiously optimistic about Chinese economy, because something I would like to propose is the China synergy. We see in the New York Times there's a China shock, but this is a China synergy, is that when you combine all those infrastructure, digital, green transformation, that really are going to make up a lot of losses on the real estate side. Because real estate may slowing down, but then you see the last 2-3 years, the new economy, new technology, and new transformation is going on. So that's the topic we would like to talk today, and China would serve as a global value chain and global supply chain for, with strong infrastructure backing. And so multinational will find that if they put production in China or work with Chinese company, that will really benefit. And also for the Chinese company going global, I think the next wave will be Chinese company going global to invest, so that they can create jobs locally, they can generate taxes, they can really serve the local community. And I just see China State Council meeting chaired by Premier Li Qiang 2 days ago. China is setting up the going global service center or service facilities, so to facilitate even more Chinese investment overseas. So I see, this green, particularly this green power, would really become a major, destination and also project for the future investment. So that, like what has happened in the past, you have to do more investment to the global different countries, particularly global south, to really make everybody and China's development and also the benefit of the world together. So I think I stop here for the brief introduction, but I really like to invite our 3 top experts to to join us. Also I have Pan Qingzhong, the Executive Dean of Schwarzman College, and Xu Jiajun, also Tenured Professor and Principal Investor Public Development Finance Research Program at the Peking University. And also, of course, Mr. Tong Lihua, Director of Beijing Youth Legal Aid and Research Center. 好，我们请他们3位上来，把这椅子搬一下。这个，赵西，把这椅子搬过来。Yeah, we have to. Okay, good. So while you're having your lunch, we can start our great experts discussion here. Basically, our panel is going to focus on the development and global development, and also the role of China. But basically, we would like to see the experts from different fields, because Dean Pan is the executive dean of Schwarzman College. He's a top expert on the Chinese education, economy, particularly international education, and also he was also the professor at the Tsinghua Economic Management School before, and you are the founding executive dean of Schwarzman for 12 years, probably. 12 years, that's right. And so we're very knowledgeable, and Dr. Pan is really, he just had the Schwarzman opening 2 days ago. You have 150 new fresh graduates, and then next year you're going to celebrate 10 years of alumni. Yeah. Okay, good. So we will hear from you.
You have a good memory.
Yeah,
Better than me.
I read your news there. Yeah, and we have Professor Xu Jiajun. She's a tenured professor at the and also principal investigator of public development finance research program at Peking University. I know you've been really also quite active in the economic studies, and so we'd like to hear from your, particularly also in the finance and all those areas. And now we have also Professor Tong Lihua. He's the director of Beijing Youth Legal Aid and Research Center, and also actually serves as a supervisor general of the All China Youth Volunteer Association. And he has a lot of knowledge on the legal front with many international meetings. So I start with you, Qingzhong. What do you see on the, maybe you can start with education and then economic, because you're also an economic professor. And how do you see this development in China in terms of education, and particularly your Schwarzman College?
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor and Dr. Wang. And there's opening remarks. It's not only the opening remarks. That is like a lecture, right? So it gives a lot of the perspectives. So that's why you're the professor, and Dr. Wang is also our professor. And every year he teaches our students, international students and domestic students. And so that's a great one. And also, he organized a lot of high-end like this VVIP, the forum dialogue. I don't know he's asleep or not. There's sleeping is the gentleman. So there's make a lot of contributions. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. And thank you. Very good. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wang. And so there's a few words about the Schwarzman College. Schwarzman College is there's like a platform that's founded 2013. That is President Xi Jinping, and also there's that time the President Obama sent the greeting letters. 2016, the September 10th, that is the Teachers' Day, China National Teachers' Day, and the President Xi Jinping and also President Obama sent another greeting letters to one school. Why? Because it's global development and cooperation is so important. And important not today and also the future. So that's why we want to work on our future leaders. That's our program. We have this year, as Dr. Wang mentioned, we have 150 students that coming from 45 countries, and the total we have students from 126 countries already, and we have 80% students from overseas and 20% from China. So that is our mission for the future collaboration, cooperation, and development globally. So that's our school. So that is the education part, and Tsinghua, and also the Tsinghua, and this year, and we have over 3,500 students. Last year we have 3,462 students. So that's just a little bit below before the COVID, but still the over 3,500 international students. All of this, we try to global development for the future. So that's the education part. So I want to say another one. Dr. Wang mentioned for economic perspective. There's this morning 8 o'clock. So we started this semester's first o'clock is the first class, sorry. And so my class is started at 8 o'clock. And so I have students from different countries, from Switzerland, Germany, and Holland, South America, and also the Argentina. So a lot of students in my classroom. And the course title is called Leading Issues in Global Economy. So since I taught that course 10 years ago, more issues coming. So I should quit that class, get less issues. And as Dr. Wang mentioned, we're facing a lot of challenges. Every time I want the students, so they raise their hand and see what's the leading issues in global economy. And almost years and years is common over there. So like climate change, like a trade issue. It's like there's the labor issue. It's the inflation and it's unemployment, inequality, a lot. But how to fix it? That's our facing. And China try our best to solve some problem. It's not a model, but we tried. It's hard. And in the last 40 years, 45 years, and we fix different stage. We fix different issues, problems. But today, as Dr. Tong mentioned. So today we have other issues, the transition and the reform, a lot of things. But how to fix it? That's our very the testing for our wisdom, for our policy, implementation, everything, a lot. So I stop here. I try to save time, and then we can talk about that later. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dean Pan. Excellent. I think yeah, let's give you some
Thank you.
well round applause. Great. You had a very good start, and then you talk about the education development. It's also, that's amazing. As we said, you have 30 million college graduates, but also Schwarzman has already, the international education is going to expand, as far as I understand now. There will be more international schooling and development in China. So we can talk more, and I hope we'll leave more time for our internal on the side discussions. So we'll have a Professor Xu, talk about your, discussion and ideas on your expertise.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Wang, for the very kind introduction. And I may give some brief introduction to the research program at Peking University that I've been leading in the past 8 years. So what I've been doing with my team is to build the first global database on public dirham banks worldwide. So when I started this project, my colleagues from World Bank, I used to work in the World Bank, and he said, this may be something that can be a non-starter. I think why? Because he said, public banks are initiated by the government to proactively pursue public policy objectives. But this country, the poor countries, they often suffer from poor governance nationwide. And therefore, it's very challenging, if not impossible, for this country to establish well-governed national banks. So history has shown that these banks have failed miserably in the past. Therefore, these banks maybe are dying out or has been commercialized, during the structural adjustment program in the 1980s and 1990s. But I'm from China. I'm a Chinese scholar. So when I started China and other, emerging economies, and including, Europe and the US, Japan, and East Asian tigers, when they industrialized in the past, they have established well-functioning national banks to provide large-scale and long-term finance. So history has given me some hints. Maybe this institution may matter. So I started this project to build this first global database on public banks, and the first result was launched at PKU in 2019, and we convened an international conference, and my team has successfully discovered more than 530 public banks from over 150 economies. And more importantly, their total asset has up to 23 trillion USD. We estimate they account for 10% of global investment. So public banks are a very potent instrument for transforming state capacity, for structural transformation. If we want to have a closer look at China's own experience of development, we'll confront a key lesson, that is achieving economic transformation in a sustainable and equitable manner is a key engine for large-scale poverty reduction in a sustainable manner. So over the past 4 decades, China has lifted 800 million people out of extreme poverty. So the scale is unprecedented. It accounts for 75% of the poverty reduction during the same period. By contrast, if we look at African countries, they have the same aspiration of economic prosperity and poverty alleviation. But when they implemented the privatization, liberalization, and deregulation reform in the 1980s, this has led to economic recession, which has even brought the setbacks in health and education and even child nutrition. So we find that economic transformation really matters. But if we want to achieve so, they encounter a lot of challenges. One big challenge is the lack of long-term finance provision. Private commercial banks, they tend to provide short-term loans. They even engage in the maturity rat race. They want to shorten the maturity in order to be the first in the line to get repaid. And we look at the private capital market, they also suffer from the short-termism. The managers in the fund, they are evaluated on a quarterly basis. They are there not to provide patient capital to foster innovation and long-term finance provision. And therefore, against this background, to address these market failures, public-driven banks, they have a key role to play. And if you look at the current, international driven financing system, we'll find that they are really suffer from some key challenges, because just recently, this July, in Spain, in Sevilla, the UN has convened a very important once-in-a 10-year conference, the fourth International Conference on Financing for Development. I was invited to join the International Commission on Financing for Development Commission and try to take a stock on what has been wrong in the past 4 decades when we try to mobilize money to finance SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. And based on my study together with the Commission members, we have found 3 key challenges. We think it's very, need to be overcome in order to achieve SDGs. And the first key challenge is that we find that many international development agencies tend to find ready-made solutions to complex challenges, which fail to foster the mandate and mindset to build systematic capacity and to achieve structural transformation, which may take a generation at least to achieve so. So this is the first challenge. And the second one is that these finance providers are incentivized to achieve short-term goals, which can be measurable and tangible in a short-term period, and they lack a long-term and comprehensive vision that we need to achieve this kind of green economic transformation, in the long run. And the last but not least, we find that even after the pandemic, we find that international community tend to set up parallel and often fragmented fund to tackle global challenges, which are often work in a siloed manner. This is like synergy. So in order to overcome this challenge, my strong recommendation is that public-driven banks has a key role to play. I think at least at 3 levels. First, at the strategy level, public-driven banks should play structural transformation at the heart of their mandate. They should take a pilot role in piloting an integrated, holistic, and transformative approach to financing SDGs. We cannot simply, only talk about climate change or simple poverty reduction or agricultural productivity. All these are interconnected. We have to take an integrated approach and also to try to put it in a larger framework of structural transformation. And secondly, it's also important to go beyond the current from billions to trillions agenda, which often focus on the project level and make individual project bankable. And they have to try to foster a transformational scaling. Very importantly, they have to recognize the size of the problem, the long-term goals, and also to have the pathways and the roadmaps to achieve so. In China, we have the 5-year planning. We also have like the 2030, agenda. This kind of vision is very important, instead of simply mobilizing more money relative to the baseline. And secondly, it's also very important to go beyond the project level approach to identify the systematic barriers and to achieve so. And Professor Wang mentioned renewable energies in his opening remark. In China, when we talked about renewable energy transformation, it's not simply to build some solar panel and wind project. It's also important to provide transmission line and distribution line. It's also important to reduce the fossil fuel subsidies. These are systematic barriers. We have to have the intervention that can align with this intervention with enabling conditions to achieve the sustainable impact at scale. And the last but not least, it's also very important for them, to have engaged in a planning framework, engaging with all stakeholders, public, private, and even civil society, in order to achieve this kind of transformational agenda in a more sustainable and self-sustaining manner. And finally, I think also at the ecosystem level, PDB, the public banks, they also need to work together with philanthropy, with private sector, and try to how to create this kind of transformational scale that we are really needed today. Because today, developing countries, they really facing much more challenging task because they have to achieve economic transformation within the planetary boundaries. And therefore, they also need more technological innovation in order to make this green structural transformation feasible in the long run. So just to sum up, I think, I do hope that, moving forward, PDB can play a greater role to act as a agent of transformative state capacity to work with developing countries who aspire to achieve economic transformation to achieve the goal as China has did in the past 4 decades. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Professor Xu, on your very comprehensive, but also with a lot of recommendations, solutions for the, this development, but also financing and how we can achieve a balance of sustainable development. So, good summary there. And now I'd like to have Professor Tong, and you are an expert in the legal affairs. So what are the legal development in China in terms of development? And would like to hear from you. Yes, okay. Please, Professor Tong.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Wang and CCG for inviting me to come here to communicate with you. In the last decades, China child protection legal system has made significant progress. I would like to introduce some basic information. So first, I would like to introduce myself and my organization. I was born in a very poor village. When I was very young, I experienced a lot of difficulties. So I understand how important the justice is for a child. Fortunately, 34 years ago, I came to Beijing to study as the first student from my county to China University of Political Science and Law. And 27 years ago, and I became the youngest director of a law firm in Beijing. At that time, I was very young. I became the director of that law firm. But I would like to promote some public interest law work, especially for children. So in 1999, I set up Beijing Children's Legal Aid and Research Center, which is the first NGO, for, legal background NGO for children. And in 2005, I set up Beijing Zhicheng Migrant Workers Legal Aid and Research Center, which is also the first migrant workers legal aid NGO in China. And so I I always want to promote the public interest law. And Beijing Children's Legal Aid and Research Center is becoming the most influential child protection NGO in China. We provide legal service to children directly. We advocate for child rights. We conduct empirical research. We promote legal and policy reform. You know, in China, we have a special law. We call it the law on the protection of minors. This law underwent 2 major amendments, and 2 times the National People's Congress invited me to write an expert version for them. So we participate in that process deeply, and many of our suggestions have become the laws and policies in this process. So I'm lucky to witness this process of China child protection legal system. So first, the second, I want to introduce this law. You know, we know UN Convention on Children's Rights came into effect in 1990. That convention stipulated a lot of child rights, but how can children achieve these rights? In 1991, National People's Congress enacted a special law. This law's core idea is transformed children's rights into adult society's obligations. So at first, this law has had 4 main chapters: family protection, school protection, social protection, and judicial protection. And in 2006, when National People's Congress amended that law, in my expert version, I wrote another new chapter, government protection. I do think it's so important for government to take more responsibilities. But finally, it was not accepted at that time. And in 2020, the National People's Congress amended this law. And this is a big change. And in my expert version, I wrote two another chapters: government protection and online protection. Finally, the law accepted this suggestion. So now in China, when we talk about child protection legal systems, it includes 6 important parts: family, school, social, judicial, government, and online. And this is the basic foundation of China child protection legal system. The second. The third, I would like to introduce briefly about online protection. Now the human society is rapidly entering into a special era. We call digital and AI era. We have to say we face a lot of unprecedented challenges. How to deal with these issues is common knowledge in the world. And in China, we have a special chapter on that law. I mentioned. And the City Council also enacted a special regulation on child online protection. This is very important, very comprehensive. And some central government agencies also published some special policies to deal with these things. So how to set up a new legal system to deal with this unprecedented challenge, we are also exploring, I have to say. And and fourth, I want to say, it's difficult to have a good law and policies, but it's so important. It's more important to implement. How to implement those laws and policies is also the similar challenge in the world. In China, we are promoting a special judicial child protection system. In the Supreme Procurate and the Supreme Court set up the special department to deal with child rights issues. They have cultivated a lot of very professional child protection judges and prosecutors. In 2003, I promoted All China Lawyers Bar Association to set up a special committee, Child Protection Committee. I served as that committee's director for 16 years. We promoted to set up a big volunteer lawyers network around China. And many lawyers are very active in this field. Some of them are very influential at national and local level in this field. So we hope we can promote to have more professional child protection judges, lawyers, prosecutors to implement those laws and policies in the future. And finally, I want to say we want to promote international cooperation. Beijing Children's Legal Aid and Research Center was authorized UN special consultative status. And we joined a lot of international activities. And we also hope to promote international cooperation to cultivate legal professionals in other countries. For example, we have help to train a very good child protection lawyer in Kenya, and we will continue to promote this work. Now I'm the vice president of Beijing Bar Association also, and I hope we can have more opportunities to cooperate with other countries' bar associations and other legal professionals to promote this process. All countries and families care about child rights, but it's so difficult for children to achieve those rights themselves. It's difficult. So only when we take more concrete actions can we bring hope and strength to children and build a shared future.
Okay.
Build a community of shared future for mankind. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Tong. Basically, we had a few experts. You know, we talk about education, we talk about economy, we talk about social. We have so much migrant workers for the development. We have children, education, also rise up, protection, legal aid. So we had a good sample of all the issues related with China development and how that has been improving and also in the future. So before I open up for comments and questions, I also like to have Professor Pan just to briefly add something, because you speak very briefly at the beginning. So you said you have giving a course on the international issues and economy. So what are those issues that you think that at China and internationally we have to be watch out or be careful, or maybe just briefly talk about that. What have you told to the Schwarzman student this morning?
So I want to save time because I want to interactive talking, this dialogue. So, and so there's in this morning is very briefly, and there's just a list of a lot of issues. Student list almost over 30 issues, and how to fix it. You know, we'll talk one by one, the 16 lectures, and for our globally perspective. So we need the collaboration and we need the governance. We need the right governance. You know, the China and the world have been changed in the past years, and the new order or new governance should be set up. Whatever the dynamic governance or dynamic order, so we need that. So that's if we rank, so the globally, so this is number one. So I just briefly answer, and we have a lot of issues, and we'll fix it one by one. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Now we'll open our comments and discussion. Okay, well, Ambassador from Luxembourg, please, first. Next, 话筒这边. And then we'll have Marshall, maybe a comment later. Huh?
Thank you very much, Henry and CCG team for organizing this very relevant luncheon. I asked for the floor first because I spent quite a lot of time in development cooperation at the beginning of my career many years ago, but also because Luxembourg is one of the unfortunately very few countries left which spend about 1% or even a little bit more of its gross national revenue on development cooperation, and which, despite any budgetary pressures, continue and have committed to do so. Another area, and I would like to commend obviously all of the speakers, but in particular Professor Xu for her very valid and relevant statements. I think I couldn't agree more with you, what you said, in particular when it comes to long-term finance. The need of long-term finance is extremely important, even more so in this very short-sighted world that we are living, or short-term world that we are living in. And which was, by the way, one of the reasons that convinced Luxembourg to become one of the first non-Asian founding member of the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, back over 10 years ago. So I would like to ask you, Dr. Xu, if you allow 2 questions. I said I could not agree more with most of what you said, but and all the different elements that you mentioned, I missed one. You spoke a lot about ownership. You spoke about the need for stakeholder participation, but I missed a little bit capacity building. So what could you tell us about capacity building in that? Because it's good to have infrastructure, and we have seen it in China, but you also need talents in all those developing countries to be able to manage public finance, to maintain infrastructure, and to plan it and to manage it very well. That's one, and the other one would be, how do you see in the future the role of private finance coming in, given that, particular for us Europeans, and I see many around the table, the constraints on public finance are getting bigger. So how do you see the need to create incentives for private finance? Because without incentives, they won't come, to join in increasingly in the game in providing additional financing for development. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, Professor Xu, maybe. Or maybe we'll have a few before we have a. Why don't we have a Marshall? You know, you are the chief representative of IMF, one of the biggest organizations, and now we have also ambassador from Switzerland too.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to hear these fascinating remarks. I wanted to follow up with a question. I think it builds on what the ambassador said. China has a wealth of experience in development now, and a number of successes. I was wondering how knowledge sharing could be nurtured. So not just building capacity, but sharing the knowledge that China's accumulated and exchanging it with other developing countries. So if the panelists could address that.
Sure, good.
Thank you.
Ambassador from Switzerland. Yeah. I don't know if Sitao wants to add something, huh? Maybe.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us to this panel with a very interesting topic. And I heard many interesting elements. I agree with almost everything I have heard. Switzerland is engaged in many of these fields. For example, when it comes to environmentally sound technologies, we have program with China. We try have a dialogue with Sitka on how we can bring core knowledge in our countries into international development cooperation. We try triangular projects with China. But one element I would also like to add, and I would like to hear your comments on it, and that is actually global development cooperation through the UN system. And China is the second biggest donor in the UN system, and we all appreciate that. However, when it comes to program funding and the current pressure under which the UN system stands, and mostly funds and programs who have a very high variable program, which comes from targeted financing from donors. We have not really seen a strategy yet how China is coming up and helps the funds and programs in this difficult situation, other than its core funding, also with programs. And also, I'm very interesting, of course, when you do funding through programs. One very important element is that you can then also integrate your ideas in these funds and programs. And there, I would also like to know from you whether there is, let's say, China is growing advisors and people that can work in the UN system, that are compatible with the UN system. So how do you see China's future approach in strengthening the UN system on the level of voluntary funding, voluntary contribution to UN funds and programs? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. I just attended an excellent 75 years concert organized by Swiss Embassy last night. It was with good Chinese orchestra and Swiss orchestra, beautifully combined. I'd like to have senior fellow from CCG, also former Deputy Director General of European Affairs at MOFCOM, Mr. Han, please.
Okay, thank you. It's very interesting to have this the ideas and the sharing. I would like just to put the two questions. One is mainly focusing on the public banks. It's very interesting now to raise this issue, like the public banks, the role of the public banks for the development of the country. When we are talking about development cooperation, mainly we are thinking about the donation to the developing countries and help them to build the economic strength. And but the public banks in China, it's a very important issue for the China's development. We have the China Development Bank. We see that as policy banks, okay? The China Development Bank and the China Exim Bank. So China Development Bank is a public bank, invested a huge investment in the infrastructure and matching the strategy of the country for the long-term strategy. So I think this experience, it could be shared with the developing countries. A lot of developing countries, they don't have such public banks that can help the strategic goal of the development of the country for the long term. When they use the budget money, is not efficient. So if you establish such public banks like the policy banks, I think it's more efficient to build the strategic goal for the development. Maybe we can, in the future, for the development cooperation, we can include the public banks, how to introduce the Chinese experience. How can we, with the policy banks, to develop the economy? And this is one notice. The second one, Dr. Xu, you mentioned that you set up the database for the public banks. So how can we access to this database? If you can give us some the direction. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Senior Fellow Han. And maybe I'll have Si Tao, Chief Economist of one of the 4 accounting firm, also among us today. Okay, Si Tao first, and then we have that last, and then we start the second round.
Thank you, Professor Wang. Thank you for inviting me.
You also worked with economists before, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe I offer just some very brief comment on your opening remarks. I think the economy is in better shape than a lot of people have assumed. I think so much emphasis has been on real estate sector for obvious reason, because 3/4 of consumers' wealth is tied to property market. But maybe I can just give the audience, some positive signs. I think one positive sign is this unleashed animal spirit, as we are seeing in asset market. in China, I think one of the most important benchmark is long-term interest rate, now almost approaching 2%, which is still low. But a year ago, maybe half of the people thought that will go to zero, like yesterday's Japan. So I think that's a very positive change. I think the second positive change is even with this frenzy in asset market, bank deposits still growing. So suggesting we don't see a real speculation yet from consumers. So those are two positive signs. But I do have a question for Professor Pan. I think your college is a very important experiment. We all know this college is essentially a JV between United States and China. But in today's multipolar world, because you touch upon the issue of governance, so maybe you can share your thought or your vision on this topic, given this fundamental shift between two countries. Thank you.
Okay, great. We have a last comment at the back.
Good afternoon, distinguished panelists. Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here. I'm Andrei from Romania, from the Institute for World Economy, but global traveler with macroeconomic presentations in almost 50 countries in the world. Very interesting debate. I would like to ask you a very short question, because nobody talked about the risks of another global financial crisis, and we have many elephants in the room. So in your perspective, what is the risk of a global financial crisis outbreaking in the following 12 months? Because we have a huge record demand for gold everywhere in the world, and we have skyrocketing prices of gold. So something is going to happen, not to talk about divergences among the largest economic blocks in the world. And the second question, if this crisis is going to outbreak in the short run, because you talked about divergence between long-term and short-term perspectives, do you think, how do you see the global development cooperation at the moment of the outbreak of the crisis? Are we going to see intensifying divergence, fragmentation, and probably conflict, or are we going to see a return to multilateralism? Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, we'll start start some answers. Maybe Qingzhong, you can start first. Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep it short and answer the Marshall's question. So there's how we can share something with other countries and keep it short. The government play the key role. This is number one. So why? Because at the beginning, 45 years ago, the job number one is the economic development. So that is is so important still today. And another one, plus, is the entrepreneurship in China. We have 60 million enterprises today, small and medium, still play the huge role in the last 45 years. In China, so when we say the Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New Year, right? Happy New Year. But in China, how can we say that? How can we say that? 恭喜发财, wish you rich, right? So they don't care about you're happy or not, but it's wish you rich. So what's that? There's the DNA from the Chinese. Tries to make a business, make a deal. So that is entrepreneurship. It's a lot of entrepreneurship, and how government plays the role is a long story. But keep it short. Government plays a key role and entrepreneurship. Answer the question, Mr. Han's question, the long-term and short-term public finance and the policy banks and public banks that play the role. So there's a lot of that, so don't worry. So now they make a lot of investment for the long-term infrastructure. The long-term infrastructure, and for our kids, for young kids, they got the benefit of that, right? They can take the high-speed train from, as Dr. Wang said, from here to Shanghai, this is 4 hours. And before, there's 24 hours. So they got the benefit. They should do something. And the ways you spend the money and the long-term, the debt, our next generation, our grandchildren, they should pay that. So that's the idea is what? So that's our generation, we finish our long-term infrastructure, and the long-term, some kind of the debt, economically, financially, our next generation will do something for their responsibilities because they got benefit from us. So that is philosophy and for the debt. answer. That's one question. I know there's a lot of behind that is other questions. From Dr. Stauf's question, and for the vision is education. You know, there's years ago, 15 years ago, the Tsinghua is 100 years anniversary. And the Tsinghua, the leaders, and before that they said, okay, Tsinghua in the last, there's 100 years, we educated, cultivated the leaders in China, the political leaders, and the business leaders, and also the academic leaders for the next the 100 years, what we can do. And they said, okay, so we want to more civilized. We want to more innovation, and also we want to more internationalized. So that is our vision, once more internationalized. So that's the one, our vision. So there's our, the college under that vision. So there's a vision means we try to not only fix the local problems and the global issues, whatever the issues we have. So why this? Well, that's why we want the students coming to China, Tsinghua, Schwarzman College, understanding each other and learn each other. And they have a kind of the common perspectives in the future and solve the common problems together. So started from understanding. So that's our, is the fundamental, the original, the goal. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Pan. I know there's some question for Professor Xu also.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Ryland, for your very excellent question. Regarding the first one, capacity building matters. And even more important is institutional innovation or policy innovation that go beyond money, but which matters for the long run success. I want to share with you the China story. So China used to be the recipient of ODA, Official Development Assistance. And in the Ministry of Finance, they have a department that work on how to manage the development project from World Bank, from Asian Development Bank, and even from DFID, and maybe from Luxembourg, those development corporations. And throughout this process, China has accumulated talents. Like President Jin Liqun, the current president of AIIB, used to be the head of that department at MOF that helped China to engage with the world and to benefit from this development cooperation. Through this kind of talent building, this helped China to build the capacity. And what I want to share with other developing countries is that even though the starting point, maybe you start with a very low base, but this doesn't matter. What matters is you have a learning curve. You need to engage in a steep learning curve. And more importantly, throughout this engagement, China has gradually built trust with this development cooperation agency. And throughout this trust, China has been able to achieve institutional innovation through development projects that go beyond the impact of the project per se. For instance, when China has engaged with the development cooperation project with World Bank, and the World Bank required China to engage in procurement. China used to be the planned economy. Procurement was new to China at that time. But throughout this process, China found this is really useful. So after they finish the project of World Bank, and they have started to adapt the procurement system in China and roll out nationwide. And this kind of example has been many, including the participatory approach to poverty reduction. It's also something that's been introduced through the engagement with international partners. So this is my answer to your first question. And secondly, regarding the role of private finance in financing SDG, that really matters. Because we know that if you look at the latest financing for development report from UN, and they estimated the financing gap for SDGs about $4 trillion USD. If we solely rely on the public money, that's not sufficient at all. So therefore, since the Addis Ababa Action Agenda back in 10 years ago, the international community has tried to engage in mobilizing more private capital in financing SDG. But if you look at what happened on the ground, what has been going wrong is that if this kind of engagement has not been structured in an accountable manner, which may end up with socializing the risks, but privatizing the benefit. I was supervised a student from Bangladesh at Peking University. They said, my government has introduced PPP, public-private partnership, in the power sector and tried to reduce the physical cost and to produce more electricity. but it turns out the government has shouldered more burden, physical burden, because they bear so much risks. The risk-sharing mechanism has not been designed in a way that benefits the country. So therefore, I think moving forward, it's really important that on the one hand, we need to think about how to incentivize private capital, to be on board, on the table. In the meanwhile, we also need to think very hard on what kind of eligibility criteria or performance, criteria has to be put into place at the starting point in order also to hold the private money accountable. In that regard, I do believe that ODA, official development finance assistance, can have a role to play a catalytic role, and to reduce the risk, even private guarantee, or even engage in project preparation, and to lay the foundation for the participation of private money. So thank you so much for your insightful comments and question. And then in response to the question from Marshall, colleague from IMF, on how China can better share the knowledge with developing country, I may use the example of public development banks. Because in China, as colleague President Xi Jinping mentioned, CDB, China Development Bank. So China Development Bank was celebrating its 30 years anniversary last year. So it's quite young. It started with 5 million RMB share capital. Could you have a guess? How big is CDB right now? What is total asset of China Development Bank right now? Just have a wild guess. So according to my database, CDB currently possesses the total asset of 2.6 trillion USD. To put into perspective, CDB is much larger than the total asset of World Bank, ADB, EBRD, Asian Development Bank, or those regional development banks combined. And why CDB is so big? Because over the past 4 decades, CDB has provided much needed long-term finance in China, and to infrastructure, to basic industry, and even some high-tech industry. And because China has achieved industrialization at such an unprecedented pace over the past 4 decades, and therefore, CDB has grown so big. And the question becomes how CDB, managed to mobilize so much money. Because when CDB was founded in 1994, at that time, China's bond market was almost non-existent. So how CDB issue that CDB does not take any household deposit. They basically rely on sovereign credit worthiness to issue bond on the capital market and to mobilize money. So this question that raised by my student from African country, because at Peking University we have the Institute of South-South Cooperation and Development. There are government officials pursuing PhD or master degree at Peking University, and they said, my government has recently established national development banks, but our bank is very small, and our capital market is very shallow. This kind of chicken and egg problem, and how we can, grow our bank to unleash their full potential. I think for this reason, I think CDB has a great deal to share with others. But very unfortunately, maybe CDB believe in the action speaks louder than words. This is Tsinghua motto. Yeah, the motto. And therefore, there's very few study about CDB, and many material has been written in Chinese. So I think this is the mission of my research team at Peking University, is to try to really understand what are the enabling conditions for CDB to play a crucial role in the transformation process in China, and what kind of lessons other different countries can learn, to fulfill the potential of their own national development banks. So this is my answer to Marshall from IMF. And finally, I have a question from colleagues from Dr. Xu Jin on the access to my database. So from day one, even though my team has devoted huge effort to build the database, but we have decided from day one that we want to make this database open access. So it's on the PKU website. I also bring some brochure. So if you scan the QR code, do a very simple registration, you will get the data for free. And we also update the data on a quarterly basis. And also related to this, when PKU launched the database back in 2019, the president of French Development Agency and many other colleagues were there, and also colleagues from the World Bank. And they said, PDB, they are important, but they never speak to each other, especially NDB, national development banks, or even subnational one. They said, we need to build a coalition of this institution in order to enable them to achieve goal in a concerted manner. So back in 2020, during the pandemics, we launched the Finance in Common Summit, where the coalition of PDB, they come together. And now we have organized 5 editions of the Finance in Common Summit. The latest one was held this March in Cape Town, where the G20 presidency was held. And the organizers are AIIB and DBSA, Development Banks of South Africa. So if you are also interested in this, you can also engage in, there's a global research network on PDB under this Finance in Common Summit umbrella, where we want to use this original data for frontier research that really can make a difference. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for Professor Xu. So you mentioned about World Bank and CDB is now larger than World Bank, but China, as I've said, learned a lot from World Bank. Actually, I remember when I started with MOVCOM early in the 80s, I was helping the World Bank doing the roadshows for international competitive bidding, what's the long list, what's the short list, and all those knowledge sharing. But also OECF, there's a lot of development system, I think, in the 80s, 90s. And ADB, we have ADB represented here too. So there was China benefiting enormously during those time. That's why CDB is built on that. But I also think that all the other countries can learn from that. I see ambassadors of Switzerland questions not answered. I would like to answer that. You mentioned about multilateral system, how UN and how the other organization can collaborate and work in this environment. I think there's quite a bit of things that China is doing now. For example, for the BRICS, now you have a BRICS bank, which also BRICS have many more economic incentives, particularly for SAO. We actually CCG made some recommendation. Why don't we put more emphasis on the economic? And I see that this time they have many economic program, development program announced for SCO, rather than just security and military, security and type of organization. But basically, I think there's more economic to that now. So what I would like to propose, maybe Belt and Road Initiative, we should multilateralize that a bit more, and we can set up office in Geneva as an international organization of some kind, and then make it more economically. But also, I think this approach of BRICS Bank, SCO Bank. Why can't G20 have a bank? Why can't APAC has a bank? And so we can really strengthen that. But also, I think that we could do more with this international focus, collaboration and development banks. So that would be how to strengthen the UN system. As China is the second largest donor now to the UN, and absolutely we're having the UN summit in New York, 80 years of celebration. I think that G20 should do more, and but also NATO. Why can't we have a free trade agreement among NATOs? So let's not militarize, securitize the organization, but maybe adding more economic and development element into those international organizations. So I think Shanghai Cooperation and BRICS country are a good example of emphasis a lot on economic. And I'd like to see BI also be more internationalized with global participation. And of course, other countries like G20 and APAC and even NATO could have lots of economic. African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Why don't we have a bank for that? So I'm just wildly thinking here. Okay, so do we have maybe we'll have another round of, maybe another 10 minutes? We finish? Okay, we have our deputy head from German embassy, right? DC.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very substantive and inspiring lunch. A great discussion here. As you know, we have a lot of delegations that come around and ask us about the situation here in China, and this discussion gives us a lot of substance for answering these questions, because we understand that China is a powerhouse, is very innovative, and is doing a lot as far as global development is concerned, because you are leading also by example, because your own development in your country is very inspiring. But when I have these briefings with my delegations from abroad, then there's a moment that gives me a little bit of chittering when the tricky question comes up. Well, you know, Mr. Graber, why is China still a developing country? Why is China considering itself a developing country? Well, I try to answer the question by saying, well, when you travel around in this large country, you see that not every spot is as developed as it might be in the East Coast. So, yeah, but that holds true also for our country. That holds true for the European Union. Not every spot is the same level developed as it is, and it's a policy aim that we try to realize, to have equal conditions everywhere. But why is China still considering itself a developing country? Though that's a really tricky question. Perhaps there might be some answer or some ideas about that. Thank you.
Sure, that'll be answered. And any more? We have a deputy head of Kenya embassy, and also our Japanese ambassador next.
Thank you very much. In the context of the global financial architecture, I think you've seen Kenya among the developing countries that has been pushing for the reforms. And this is in the context of, for example, last year, we held the IDA Heads of African States Summit in Nairobi. And for us, our argument has been, if you look at China and even CDB, just for context, we are working very closely with the policy banks, CDB, Exim. We are also members of AIB, and we've seen some support, especially in project preparation, because PPP now is a viable model for our infrastructure development. But my question is, what is the role of China to position itself in terms of coming up with a more fit-for-purpose vehicle when you look at our push for the reforms to be well put together? Looking at the climate change and all the adversities, we see our national budgets now have to move or diversify or move towards fixing and mitigating the effects, harsh effects of climate. And that means then we are depleted of funds towards infrastructure development. So then when you look at CDB, how then can we push for these grants? That is why we came up with the IDA 21 replenishment, where we're pushing for more grants towards developing countries. So what then can CDB Exim do in the context of that, whether it's at low or interest-free long-term financing? Because we still have a lot to do in giving the private sector incentives towards the private financing, and that will take time. But today we are in a place where we really need more infrastructure. So that means there could be a role for China with your policy banks, your public banks, and therefore what then can we do in the context of our reforms agenda? Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, our Japanese ambassador, please.
Well, thank you very much, Henry, and all the panelists for wonderful presentations. My question is very simple. What is the prospect of Shanghai Cooperation Organization Development Bank? It has been under discussion for several years, and finally, in Tianjin, there was an agreement to establish a bank. But I'm not a financial expert. I'm a layman on financial issues, but as far as I know, the settlement currency of AIIB or BRICS Bank are mainly US dollars. But under the perceived SCO development bank, the settlement currency seems to be renminbi, if I'm not mistaken. And renminbi has been tightly controlled by the Chinese government. How you reconcile the, settlement currency being renminbi in the SCO and strict control on renminbi by the Chinese government? This is a layman's comment, so I may be wrong.
All right. So since I raised the SCO, I answer first. what I think is that BRICS Bank they have developed, and then they're trying to diversify a little bit, but it's going to be long haul to not using U.S. dollars. So U.S. dollar is still dominant. And SCO, I noticed Putin announced that all the trade done between China and Russia is no longer it's local currency of both countries now, probably largely in RMB. So I do not think that I don't see anywhere in the press that they're going to use the RMB as a currency for the SCO bank. But I think they're going to be probably mixed. That's my guess. In the future that I'm sure U.S. is going to be used, but Euro, other countries, RMB maybe. So it could be a diversified approach. But I think it's good that the SCO used to be a security organization, now develop into a more economic organization, which I think it's good in this kind of geopolitical context. So that would be my brief answer. But also just answer that the other question our German friend just mentioned about why China is not classify itself as a developed country. I think largely due to the tradition, because China, you remember from Chairman Mao days, they said, "Oh, third world, they are the one of the leading countries for third world," and that's developing countries. Now it's called global south, whatever. So I think there is a political tag there that they belong to a developing country. But I think in the WTO. The developing countries enjoy much more preferential treatment, and China actually, the tariff on average is only 7%. It's always close to the developed country already. And then China recently announced they're going to give up a tariff for all 53 African countries, 0. So that's an even more bold activity than developed countries, than the U.S., where U.S. is raising tariff China. So I think in practice, China is doing a lot of things like a developed country. But then in the name, they still say, okay, they are not asking for developing country benefit, but they want a developing country political status so that they can speak for the developing country if they, that's why they're doing something like that. So, but I think on the benefit side, they are already giving up so many of them already. So it's kind of a mix. I would answer for that. Okay, maybe we'll see other two.
One question and the top question for you, okay? So for that's developing countries, the concept, last year and before last year, who is the richest country in the world? The Luxembourg. Luxembourg is 110,000 GDP per capita. Is that right? Number one. 2 years, number one.
But if you average that in China, China's still a developing country.
It's only 10,000, only 10% of Luxembourg. Is that right? So that's why they're still the developing countries. Another example, in Luxembourg, so you say, his fault, okay. Yeah. And one example in we have a credit course, we call it deep dive is a deeper understanding China, and there's a credit course, and there's 2 weeks our students go anywhere in China, and normally 9 cities. And one time I brought our team to 1 areas. One will arrive there, our students, our teachers, professors, they cried. Why they cried? Because they said, we have never seen such kind of the poor areas before. So that's unbalanced develop. So inland is the coastline, the inland is still different. So that's why we call the common prosperity, the champion, right? So we try to more developed. So briefly answer your question. Thank you.
I have one lady from ADB just walking this building, Asian Development Bank. Why don't you raise your question?
Thank you. I have to respond because I've been mentioned, our organization been mentioned a few times. Okay, first is knowledge sharing and capacity building. We are doing everything every year with the projects, solid projects. Every project we require gender issues, and then capacity building and knowledge sharing. And we use our organization as a platform, not only sharing advanced world's advanced technology, everything, but mostly the PRC Chinese knowledge to the rest of Asia and the Pacific, even South-South cooperation. As a matter of fact, end of this month, we're going to have East Asia Forum, which we will invite the South East Asia and Central Asia and then South Asian countries to come and learn and then exchange and then show them how successful, not ADB project, but really Chinese project. That's one. And second, about your GDP, no, not GDP, developing country. How do you define a developing country is based on the per capita GDP. Given China's 1.4 billion population, not all the people like us sitting here in Shanghai and Beijing, the standard of living is totally different. And besides, the landlocked regions, their experience is not so much and they don't have so much money. Okay, then the argument would be the rich provinces can help with the poor provinces. We have that. We have that, like Shanghai and Ningxia, and then they pair together like partners. However, there are many areas China does not have solutions, like aging, healthcare, and even kids, and then the legal issues. We have a lot to learn from others. So that's also partly, I agree with Henry, that maybe politically we hold back a little bit, that we're still developing countries. That's from the culture that Chinese is always been humble. We have advanced technology, especially from the private sector. We have to learn from them. Even so, the elderly care, we realize that actually the private sector is more advanced than the developing banks like us, somehow. Even because they digest their local problems and then learn from outside, and then they combine these two together to find the best solutions for Chinese standard of living and then the habit of lives, you know, or elderly people. And that's, I think we have a lot to learn. That's why. Okay. And then we now discuss about whether China should be graduated from ADB. Yeah. That's been discussed for years. And that's really the country's policy and also the negotiation. We're not the one, China is not the one who make the decision, it's the board.
Okay.
It's not really us. Okay,
all right,
thank you.
All right, good. We're running out of time, so just briefly, Professor Xu, you have any comments? Yeah.
Yes, just very briefly. In response to the question on the currency denomination of the newly, the proposed MDB that raised by President Sugi. So I think the institutional design of this new bank is still to be seen in the future. But I want to share with you my observation of the limitation of the USD-denominated currency loans as the current MDBs. That is, they may create a balance of payment problems for developing countries, especially when they engage in the field of renewable energy. These projects often have to proceed in local currency. If they borrow loans denominated in hard currency from World Bank, from ADB, this may create balance of payment problems if the foreign reserve of the country is very poor. And we do observe these kind of cases on the ground. So the local currency finance is in short supply. So I hope that this new MDB may innovate its institutional design in order to solve this problem, to better provide more local currency financing. And very briefly, on the question from a colleague from Kenya about how China may engage with IDA grant or others, I think triangular cooperation could be a way forward. And especially, the World Bank talked about a one World Bank approach, like grant money and, concessional loans and equity investment and guarantees can work together and in order to achieve some transformational project on the ground. And China is very open to triangular cooperation. CDB has a triangular cooperation project with ADB in West Africa. I think about 2 years ago. I think they are very open to this kind of collaboration. That might be something that we can explore in the future. Yeah.
Good. Professor Tong, have a last word? No? Okay. Okay, good. So we basically come to the end, but I think it's a very stimulating, very fruitful discussion, and I really appreciate our three panelists who joined us. But I also appreciate all the guests, VIP guests coming from different embassies, different organizations, international organizations from different parts of the world. Really, it's a really productive, stimulating, and very, for me, very enlightening discussion as well. So we learn a lot, and I hope that we'll continue. We'll broadcast this section again as our past 17 VIP Luncheon online, and I hope that all of you will come again. So on behalf of CCG, I want to thank you very much, and we look forward to our next month's VIP Luncheon. Thank you.